George Soros is a name that evokes strong reactions. To some, he is a champion of democracy and human rights. To others, he is a shadowy figure, pulling strings behind the scenes. Born in Hungary in 1930, Soros survived the Nazi occupation and later escaped communist rule. These experiences profoundly shaped his worldview. Soros believes in the importance of open societies, societies that are democratic, tolerant, and respectful of human rights. In 1979, he founded the Open Society Foundations, a network of organizations that support these values around the world. OSF has provided billions of dollars in funding to a wide range of causes, including education, healthcare, and human rights. Soros's philanthropy has made him a hero to many, but it has also made him a target. His critics accuse him of using his wealth to advance a liberal agenda and interfere in the affairs of sovereign nations. Soros's supporters counter that he is simply trying to make the world a better place. They argue that his critics are motivated by fear and prejudice. The truth, as is often the case, is complex. Soros is a complicated figure who defies easy categorization. He is neither a saint nor a villain. He is a man of contradictions, driven by a deep-seated belief in the power of open societies. The Open Society Foundations, Soros's brainchild, functions as a sprawling network of organizations. They operate under a unifying mission to promote open societies globally. Their work spans a diverse array of fields. OSF supports initiatives focused on education, healthcare, economic development, and human rights. They provide funding and resources to NGOs and grassroots organizations. These groups work on the front lines, tackling issues like poverty, discrimination, and lack of access to basic services. OSF's reach extends across the globe. They operate in Africa, Asia, Europe, Latin America, and the Middle East. Their work often focuses on countries transitioning to democracy or facing significant challenges to open societies. OSF's approach emphasizes local leadership and grassroots solutions. They believe that sustainable change must come from within. By empowering local communities and organizations, OSF aims to create lasting impact. However, their work has not been without controversy. Critics accuse OSF of imposing Western values and undermining local cultures. George Soros has become a lightning rod for criticism. His philanthropy, while lauded by many, has also attracted fierce opposition. Conservative and authoritarian voices in particular view Soros with suspicion and hostility. They accuse him of using his wealth to advance a liberal, globalist agenda. One of the most common criticisms leveled at Soros is that he interferes in the internal affairs of sovereign nations. His critics point to his support for pro-democracy movements and human rights groups in countries with authoritarian governments. They argue that Soros is a foreign meddler seeking to destabilize regimes and impose his will on others. Another criticism is that Soros uses his wealth to influence elections. His critics accuse him of funneling money to political campaigns and organizations that support his preferred candidates. They argue that Soros is trying to buy influence and undermine democratic processes. Soros has vehemently denied these accusations. He maintains that his philanthropy is motivated solely by a desire to promote open societies. Section 5. The Puppet Master Narrative. Accusations of destabilization. The narrative of George Soros as a puppet master, pulling the strings of global events, has gained traction in certain circles. This narrative often portrays him as a shadowy figure, manipulating world events for his own nefarious purposes.
This portrayal often relies on anti-Semitic tropes and conspiracy theories. Soros, who is Jewish, has been falsely accused of controlling world banks, orchestrating revolutions, and undermining national sovereignty.
These accusations are often spread through disinformation campaigns and amplified by right-wing media outlets. They play on existing fears and prejudices, painting Soros as a scapegoat for complex societal problems.
The puppet master narrative is particularly potent in countries where anti-Semitism is prevalent, or where there is a distrust of Western influence. It is often used to discredit pro-democracy movements and human rights organizations that receive funding from Soros's organizations.
By portraying these groups as pawns in Soros's alleged globalist scheme, authoritarian regimes can justify cracking down on dissent and limiting civil liberties. In geopolitics, the concept of red lines refers to boundaries or actions that, if crossed, will provoke a significant response, often military. For Russia, these red lines are tied deeply to its sense of security and influence over its neighboring countries.
Russia's red lines are not just about territorial boundaries. They encompass political and military influence as well. When these lines are crossed, it is seen as a direct threat to Russia's national security.
The West, particularly NATO, has repeatedly tested these red lines, leading to heightened tensions and, at times, conflict. Understanding these red lines is crucial for navigating the complex landscape of international relations.
For Russia, the expansion of NATO and Western influence into what it considers its sphere of influence is unacceptable. These actions are viewed as encroachments that must be met with firm resistance.
The conflict in Ukraine has often been framed by Russia as a response to the crossing of its red lines. The annexation of Crimea and the support for separatists in eastern Ukraine are seen as measures to protect Russian interests.
As a Ukrainian citizen, it's hard to see my country caught in the middle of these geopolitical struggles. The justification for invasion is often cloaked in the language of protecting Russian-speaking populations and countering Western aggression.
This narrative serves to legitimize actions that would otherwise be condemned on the international stage. By framing the conflict as a defensive measure, Russia seeks to justify its interventions and maintain its sphere of influence.
But for us, it's about sovereignty and the right to determine our own future without external interference. The human cost of this conflict is immense, and the justifications often feel hollow compared to the reality on the ground.
George Soros' influence spans the globe, but his impact is also deeply felt within individual nations. His Open Society foundations have funded numerous initiatives aimed at promoting democracy, human rights, and transparency.
While our work has brought positive change in many areas, it's not without controversy. Critics argue that Soros's funding often comes with strings attached, influencing domestic policies and political landscapes.
This duality of global impact and domestic control is a central theme in the debate over Soros's legacy. The question of whether George Soros is a benevolent philanthropist or a manipulative puppet master is hotly debated.
From a Western perspective, Soros is often seen as a champion of open societies and progressive causes. However, his critics argue that his financial power allows him to wield undue influence over governments and media.
This dichotomy fuels ongoing discussions and shapes public perception of Soros worldwide. George Soros' legacy is one of both admiration and controversy. His contributions to philanthropy and his influence on global politics will be studied and debated for years to come. Soros' vision for an open society continues to inspire and provoke, leaving an indelible mark on the world stage.
Soros' activities in Eastern Europe have certainly stirred the pot. His support for pro-democracy movements has often put him at odds with authoritarian regimes.
In the West, Soros is frequently lauded for his efforts to promote transparency and human rights. Yet, his critics argue that his actions can sometimes destabilize regions.
From the Russian government's standpoint, Soros's initiatives are seen as direct threats to national sovereignty and stability. Our red lines are clear. Any attempt to undermine our political system will be met with strong resistance.
Despite the controversies, many NGOs funded by Soros are doing crucial work in areas like education, healthcare, and social justice. It's a complex picture, to say the least.
As a Ukrainian citizen, I see both sides. Soros' support has helped us in our struggle for democracy, but it has also made us a target. The geopolitical tensions are palpable.
In the end, George Soros remains a polarizing figure, whose actions continue to influence global politics and societal change in profound ways.